Welcome to your favorite drive-in theater and a sparkling new season. Watch our screen and local newspapers for all the fine shows coming this way. Show after show will feature the latest hits, the biggest stars for fun-filled, pleasure-packed evenings.
The moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerf Herder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Christina Yojimbo Henry. You can continue. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
The couple we went with, they're there for another month.
Oh, nice.
I can't do that. There's only so much you can do on Maui. I did go out on my way to the one and only comic book store on Maui. I shared some pictures with Jim. We went to Mick Fleetwood's restaurant, and we were supposed to have a concert with him, but he canceled.
Oh.
So, but we still saw his house band. So, but yeah, it was fun. It was cool. Ran into somebody we knew.
That happened to my dad.
Like neighbors down the street. And it's like, I live right next to you. I don't see you for 12 years. And now here you are. It was nice. Thank you.
What was that guy's name from Groundhog Day? The insurance guy?
Oh, Ned.
Ned Ryerson, yeah.
Ned.
He says it's not him.
Yeah. Why? I would have enjoyed hanging out with Ned. Yes. Are you free tonight, Ned? You guys held down the fort?
So Jeff is officially back this week. He was sort of back last week.
I was going to say, if you listened to last week, I was there, but yeah, in spirit only.
In spirit only. That was recorded. That was recorded several weeks previous to Jeff's trip.
You missed watching Suspiria, Jeff.
I did miss watching Suspiria, and I'm not crying about it.
No, you're sad. You're sad.
Yeah, there's a couple. I didn't want to listen to you guys talk about it. Watch it.
You didn't listen to us.
You know, it would be worse, Jeff, if you watch the trailer. I think that's worse than watching the actual movie.
That's exactly what you said before. But Jim can validate that. We got 2 listens in Hawaii when I was there. So
yes, he did his due diligence, and he gave us a couple listens from Hawaii.
I actually pilfered up the island with some of the TMI stickers as well. Yeah.
So they can absolutely trace it back to us when we get the littering bill from Maui.
Well, they're not alone. There's a ton of them. And to be honest with you, the one at the Maui Brewing Company, I did request. I asked if it was okay.
Oh, you did?
Yes. Oh no. I'm not just gonna like sneak behind a bar and slap it on.
Oh, it wasn't above the trough.
The urinal. No.
The urinal trough. Yeah.
That would have been a good one. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, you can just kind of stare blankly as you're in there. So
it's over the Crown Royal bottle in the
good. At least we're represented. Thank you, Jeff.
That's right. Yes. So it's always better to ask, correct?
Of course.
Yes. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. There were a couple of times when no one was looking. I just slapped one someone.
So we were kind of, down to business these past 3 episodes. We skipped over news for the large part. So
you guys do you have anything?
Do you have any news today?
I do. I have 2 news items. They're nothing. I mean, I don't even know at this point we need to talk about Gilbert Gottfried. Poor man. But anyways, I do have some news. But what are we talking about?
This week we are talking all Cage, nothing but Cage today. Yeah. Nicolas Cage is on tap.
This is like our second.
Yeah, this is not the first time we have done this, but this is, a theatrical release. The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent is our main feature this week. I would have loved to have paired this with The Unbearable Lightness of Being, just for the because title. I don't think there's any other movie with the word unbearable, and I could be wrong about that. But we are teaming it up with another Nick Cage movie, Face Off. And this is very apropos because Face Off is referenced heavily in Unbearable Weight. So I can't wait to get into this.
There's a few Nick Cage vehicles that were mentioned in this movie.
More so, I think, than were in the movie, because if you stay and watch the credits, like every single Nicolas Cage movie is, footage from Ghost Rider, courtesy of. I'm like, I don't remember seeing footage of Ghost Rider.
I read that there were a ton of scenes that were cut.
Yeah. Well, there was some scenes in the trailer that I remembered that weren't in the movie.
Yeah.
So
that happens. Apparently that's all going to be available on the back end on the DVD release. So stay tuned for that. Yeah, there was an extensive scene that was filmed and then cut. So we'll get into that. So yes, let's talk a little bit of news. And I'm hoping that these are going to be fun items that we can all bring to the table. Something to talk about. If not, then Jim can just cut it. and then the listeners will be like, what was Jeff talking about?
I'm cutting as you speak, Jeff.
Okay, fair enough. I was actually on the last 2 episodes. Jim cut me all out. So let's go back to last week's episode, which we spoke about The Wizard of Oz. If you don't follow us on Twitter, we're getting some nice little feedback over there. So shameless plug for our Twitter account, TMI_podcast 2018. But check this out. One of Dorothy's iconic dresses that we spoke about is going up for auction. This thing was discovered. It's been missing for years.
Where was it?
It was in a plastic bag in a guy's office.
Like at his job?
At Washington, D.C.'s Catholic University. This was gifted to him back in the 70s to a Reverend Gilbert Hark, who was head of the drama department. And I guess this is like one of those school lore stories that Dorothy's dress is supposedly here somewhere. No one can find it.
Does he have the Black Knight's sword as well?
That would be interesting. They didn't mention that. I don't even know.
I picture this guy's office is looking like it's out of Night at the Museum or something.
If you haven't cleaned your office since 1970, there's probably a ton of stuff in there. During the pandemic, people were cleaning out, and lo and behold, they opened up this box. And this is only one of 2 existing dresses that still retain the white blouse that goes with the gingham dress. There's only 4 of these blue and white dresses in existence. And they immediately recognized what it was, sent it off to the Smithsonian, who verified it. There's wear on it. Obviously, it has Judy Garland's name handwritten on the inside of it. And they were able to pinpoint it specifically to the scene of Dorothy in the witch's castle. So it is a screen-worn item.
Wow.
And apparently...
What would the need be to put her name on the inside? Would people not know that she is Dorothy on set? Oh, this is Judy Garland's dress.
But don't forget, you mentioned on last week's show that there were stunt people.
There may be a stand-in.
She had a stand-in. They probably, so these were, she... Yeah, you're right. It's not like there was like a munchkin, multiple munchkins or whatever. But it does have her name on the end. I think the shoes do as well. That was how they actually tracked down those missing pair of ruby slippers.
They had stunt feet in the movie?
Yes, correct. Yeah. Well,
Did she not knock her feet 3 times? Were those stunt feet?
You can't have Judy possibly breaking an ankle. The same lady who curled her toes up when she went underneath, when the witch went underneath the house, by the way.
That was a good trick. I like that one.
That was a good trick, yeah. So not many people can do that. Originally, they were going to keep this as part of their collection, and I think they realized pretty quickly they could probably make a good buck at it, because the last one that went up for auction in 2011, I believe, sold for $1.5 million.
Oh my gosh.
So, well, think how, we talk about that. How iconic is this? I mean, outside of the ruby slippers themselves.
Hopefully it's not just a private collector. I would hope that somebody like the new Hollywood Oscar Museum Hollywood, or something is buying these things so people can see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Smithsonian even. So anyways, they're estimating this value at $800,000 to $1 million. I'm going to guess that it's probably going to go higher than that, but the auction is May 24th at Bonham's Auction House in LA. So scrape your change together, kids.
Mm-hmm.
I heard that they also found the mummified munchkin that's hanging in the background in that one scene. That'll be hanging in a museum near you very soon.
Yeah. Wow. Please feel free to add some crickets to that.
That's going to be the highlight of this show. People are pulling over and laughing at this point.
A little off color.
Again, that's an inside joke to last week's episode.
I don't think that's an inside joke. That is a widely held, as we spoke about last episode. That's a widely held urban legend.
Okay. All right. So that's news item 1. News item 2, which I think you guys will get a kick out of, is the English Heritage, which is a British nonprofit that maintains culturally significant sites in England, has announced that it is seeking 1,897 people to don vampire costumes in celebration of Dracula's anniversary. They are looking to beat the Guinness Book of World Record for the largest gathering of people dressed as vampires. The record is 1,039, set in Virginia in 2011. So you've got another 800, almost 900 people to gather. But apparently the Guinness Book of World Record is very strict about what actually counts as vampire garb. So don't just be, slapping on your Bram Stoker Dracula t-shirt.
And I bet, and I would be very disappointed if they did not exhume Dracula himself to speak to the crowd. He'd probably say something, "I love you too much. I love you too much."
What is up with all the dead jokes?
Well, was it too soon for Dracula? And by the way, the Munchkin thing isn't real. So I'm not offending anybody there.
So here, if you're gonna go, it's May 26th, so it's only 2 days after the auction.
Get a tight schedule if you want to attend both events.
Schedule. Matter of fact, you should probably just show up at the auction in your garb and then just fly over. Participants all need to don black pants or skirts, black shoes, waistcoats, black capes or collared overcoats, and more importantly, a set of artificial fangs. Get your act together, kids, and head on over. And then those are the only news items I have. No death, no.
Well, I have one death.
Oh,
I need to mention
the
death of a notable Chicagoan, Cynthia Albritton, at the age of 74, also known as Cynthia Plastercaster.
Oh. Was she a member of the GTOs?
She was not. I think she did plaster Frank Zappa. I think he was one of her.
He was one of her. Was she responsible for the infamous Jimi Hendrix plaster?
Yes.
She was.
Yes.
Yeah.
The infamous Jimi Hendrix plaster. She actually ran for Chicago mayor in 2010.
What stopped her from winning? The plaster casts?
The plaster cast.
I mean, she may not have been qualified for the office.
None of them are.
Talk about having stuff in your office, man.
Oh my. Well, that's sorry to hear that. And that's it. That's all I got.
That's it.
News out. Let's get into this.
All right.
Unbearable weight of massive talent. I will tell you that there was a guy in the theater. I convinced my wife to come with me, and we're standing there waiting for popcorn and whatnot. Poor Jim couldn't even have popcorn. You guys missed the whole dental conversation.
I couldn't have popcorn either.
Oh, that's true. So I ate enough for both of you. To
you
be
did.
honest with you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There was a poor guy, and he was on the phone, and he didn't know what the name of the movie was, and he was frantically calling his friend to try and figure out.
He can't just say Nick Cage, and they.
You think that he just kept saying Unbearable something, and the kid's like, "I'm not seeing anything come up," and I'm like, in my Regal now, there's no marquees. There's nothing
that kid should not have a job there.
I agree.
If he cannot help somebody, Unbearable, I'm not seeing anything, sir. I have no idea what's playing myself.
Sonic 2? Finally had to say, and I spit it out. And he goes, "Yes, that's it." Yeah, Nick Cage movie would have.
Then the kid just handed over his name tag at that point. He's like, "You take it, sir. You take it."
He should have.
I had an opposite experience. Because as I was just sharing that, and I'll share this with the audience out there, I went very early in the day on Friday, directly from a dental appointment, which is a different story. But I arrived at my theater at about 11:15 a.m. for an 11:25 showing. Walked in. I must have been the first person to walk in the theater that day. There was one guy working behind the counter, and he looks at me and he says, "Let me guess, Unbearable weight."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, "Do I look that pretentious?"
Yeah, apparently.
No, Sonic 2. Yeah, you're right. Unbearable weight.
We had a pretty full theater. We went on Saturday afternoon, probably like 3/4 full.
Yeah, I was the only one in my theater. The absolute solitary person in my theater. But still, even though at 11:30, I did the same thing for Spider-Man No Way Home, and that was a full theater at 11:30 a.m.
Yeah, the pretentious people wake up late on Friday.
I guess they do.
They 11 o'clock.
They braid their ponytails and then they go to the theater.
We had a pretty packed. It was 8 o'clock on a Friday night, so that is pretty prime. Yeah, my audience was really into it. Are we?
We are.
Into it?
Are we into it as well?
No, I mean, are we into it? Yeah, are we into it? Did we enjoy this movie is what I'm
I was very excited to sit down. This was probably the first time, not counting Spider-Man No Way Home, but it's been a while since I was excited for a movie to start. And I was completely invested in this from the get-go.
You weren't invested in the trailers.
Oh, speaking of the trailers, guys, have you seen the preview for Men?
Yeah, that was interesting. That was really bizarre. I will tell you, there was another one that was a scary nun story. And I'm like,
oh,
I would watch. But I said, my wife's like, no way. No. And I'm like, I would watch this.
I don't know what either of you are talking about. The only one I got was Doctor Strange, and I did not watch it.
I did not get Doctor Strange.
Jim doesn't like demonic possession movies, so we can't watch that.
So you finally sway me to watch scary movies.
If we do that, we got to pair it with Kingdom of the Spiders. So I don't think that's going to happen. So
that is true.
I'm drawing the line in the sand on this one.
We all have therapy issues here.
It'll be a triple feature, and we're going to cover Suspiria again as the third feature.
That's right. That's for you, Jim.
Bite me. I'm out. Sorry. I gotta go back
but this preview for Men, Jim, I don't want to get too off topic, but just go look at the preview for this movie. This is one of those movies where you're like, this could be great,
it could be horrific,
or it could be terrible. Like, it's definitely a swing for the fences movie, but just go look at the preview.
Okay. I will go look.
Yes, we were all very excited about this movie. My whole family went. Showing my hand a little early. We all had a really good time.
It was fun. My wife stayed awake, so that right there is a 5 bucket review in and of itself. 8 o'clock on a Friday, mind you.
When we mentioned we were going to do this, I said to you guys, there's this book coming out, Age of Cage.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Were either of you able to read it?
Stop. I read 3 books on vacation, but it was not that one.
I'm very proud of you.
Yeah, I know you're very proud. I feel like a 4-year-old. Do I get a gold star? I not only read homework for next week, but I read 2 Michael Crichton books. One of them was Airframe. I should not have been reading that before getting on a plane for 6 hours.
No, I did not read it. I did not read it. No.
So I did. I want to mention this book to our listeners because this is a very nice companion piece, actually, to this movie.
In case you didn't get enough Nicolas Cage in this.
Yes. So it's called Age of Cage. It's written by Keith Phipps. And the subtitle is 4 Decades of Hollywood Through One Singular Career.
Is it Age of Cage or
Age of Cage?
Okay.
Age of Cage.
There you go.
And it's not very long. And it sort of breaks down like each decade of Nicolas Cage's career. And it was very, very interesting to read it in light of this movie, which obviously plays with certain aspects of his public persona. I felt like I was really grounded in the whole scope of his career before seeing this.
There are 2 pretty in-depth interviews that are out there now. One for, what was it, Vanity Fair that you had forwarded to both Jeff and I?
I sent you guys, I think it was GQ Hollywood. Or
GQ, one of those magazines.
I think it was GQ, yeah.
And there's also another interview circulating with Rolling Stone about this movie. So, they ask him all the typical questions like, why were you taking so much work? And, going through his career. So reading those interviews was very helpful and also gave some backstory going into this movie. Because believe it or he turned this down like 3 or 4 times. Yeah, and if you're the director, writer, the maker of this movie, what are you going to do? Change it to some other actor? You can't. You've written this around Nicolas Cage. If he doesn't do it, your movie is kaput. No. Thankfully, after a personal letter was written to Mr. Cage by the director, he decided to go ahead and do it. And you can understand why, because if he puts himself out there like this, playing himself, there's going to be a perception that this is what he is really like. And it's a fictional version.
Yes.
Of Nicolas Cage. And we talked about this months and months ago, but this reminds me of the situation with Velvet Goldmine and David Bowie refusing to let his songs be used because he didn't want people to think that this was a biography of his life and thinking that if his songs were in there, then he must condone this. This must be what's happened. So I can see why he was hesitant to sign on for this.
When I read Age of Cage, so the author didn't actually interview Nicolas Cage. He did ask him at one point if he wanted to be involved, and they didn't want to. So he wrote this book. But what he did was he went back to like gather information from existing interviews that were out there. And one of the things that comes through really, really clearly is that Nicolas Cage does not like to be interviewed. He does not like to put himself out there in that really personal way. You know, he wants like his performances to speak for themselves, whatever they are. So I can understand his hesitation, why he wouldn't necessarily want to do something like this.
It definitely comes across as like a vanity project. I mean, it's like, all right, we're going to base an entire movie around you as a human being. It does seem really self-indulgent on the outside. But
it's important to know that he wasn't involved in the creation of this, right. That he was pursued, that this was a fan that made this, and he had to be convinced to take the role on of himself. Quote unquote.
They did consider subbing Daniel Day-Lewis or Christian Bale as like playing Nicolas Cage.
And they would have been willing to do so? Either of them?
I don't know, but that was what the directors said. I read an interview with the directors because they were like, he turned us down and we didn't know what to do. Because
John Travolta's already played him.
Dude, that's exactly what they should have got is John Travolta to just play Nicolas Cage. He's already done it once.
You know, like you said, they tried multiple times to get him and they were like, this project is dead.
Yeah.
If Nicolas Cage doesn't come on board. And so then they thought someone like Daniel Day-Lewis or Christian Bale, who would be, you know, good at sort of disappearing into a part. Yeah. But then they were like, it doesn't work unless you have Nicolas Cage. So they just kept kind of pursuing him, you know, going after him. But I have to say, I mean, he's great in this movie. He plays it straight, not with an awareness of like, I'm playing myself, ha, ha, ha. You know what I mean? But the movie really works because Pedro Pascal is so good.
Adorable is the word you're looking for.
But I think that he's just channeling his own love for Nicolas Cage, because if you read anything with, you know, he was talking about this movie in a recent interview that I forget where I read it, but he was saying that he is a super fan of NicolasAge in real life.
If you're going to see this movie, I think that you are. If you don't like Nicolas Cage, you're not going to like him anymore.
Right, this is not the movie for you.
If you love Nicolas Cage, you're going to come out of this movie going, this guy's a freaking genius.
But it's not him it's not like a masturbatory self-awareness fest. It's, you know, a send up of Hollywood at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very meta. It's very tongue in cheek. Pedro, the relationship and the chemistry between these two characters is what cements this entire thing.
Pedro Pascal has heart eyes every time he looks at Nicolas Cage. You can see the hearts coming out of his eyes.
And then I have hard eyes looking at Pedro Pascal because I'm like, this guy is just adorable.
But you got to admit, although the plot is kind of besides the point, really, here. You're just here to see Cage do Cage. You're looking at him and you kind of don't really think to yourself until afterwards, well, Pedro Pascal's character was a figurehead, yet he didn't really know that his cousin was killing people. Isn't that what cartels do? You know,
you can't scratch the surface.
This guy is like too naive and innocent to do what he's doing. So he can't wash his hands of everything here.
Here's the thing, though: the plot is flimsy.
Yes,
but they get away with it because they're telling you they're making up the plot on the fly.
Yes, because you're watching the movie. Well, no, you're not really, because it's otherwise it'd be Demi Moore throughout the entire thing.
Right, but they're telling you that they're making up the plot. They're like it's going from a serious character drama between
they are literally
relationship between two men, and then in the third act it becomes the big Hollywood moment.
Action here.
They can almost get away with it because they're telling you, we know the plot is flimsy. Like, we know that doesn't necessarily all hang together.
I would like to know what his original screenplay was about, because they just kind of brushed past that. Hobbies.
Yeah. Do we want to kind of because
I was expecting he finally reads it and it's brilliant, and then he does that movie. It's not the case.
No.
Maybe that's the sequel. Javi screenplay.
I don't want to see a sequel. It is what it is. When they put him in prosthetic makeup there and he's pretending to be the mob boss or whatever, the cartel leader, that started to fall apart a little bit for me. Like there's a scene where Javi is trying to get Nick on board and he gets him to drop acid. Yes. And they're basically tripping and they're convinced that these two people sitting on the side eating sandwiches are watching them and they're running. There are moments in this that are just laugh out loud, silly, goofy. Like if I was 14 years old and I probably had too many Pop Rocks and a glass of soda, I would have been peeing my pants. There was definitely some funny moments. And again, the two of them together is comedy gold.
But unfortunately, and this is why I hate trailers. That whole scene with them trying to climb the wall. I'd seen it a million times. I'm like, this isn't funny, unfortunately, anymore, just because of over familiarity.
I still laughed.
But I did love, and this was in the trailer too. I still laughed at the one where he's in the boat, doesn't realize that Javi is there. And he's like, just tell this Javi, I don't want to sleep with his wife. I don't want him to watch me sleep with his wife. I am Javi. I am Javi.
And then he kind of like goes quiet, like his face gets very still. He does the kung fu bow, like
yes, Nick Cage.
Nick Cage. Yeah.
Again, reading these interviews with Nick Cage about this movie, he's like, "I am not this way as a father. This is not me. This is fictional."
No, he doesn't. He doesn't really have a daughter.
The daughter's complaining that he's like, we never do anything that I want to do. You always do something. You're trying to mold me into you. I'm like, of course. Like, what's wrong with that?
That's what every parent does. You like what I like.
It's like, oh, are we watching The Island of Dr. Calamari again?
Yeah, that was mentioned. Am I the only one who thinks that pairing up Paddington 2 would have been a brilliant stroke? But
if only we'd known.
If only we'd known.
I know.
I've seen the first Paddington, but I've never seen Paddington 2.
I heard too. I meant to look up the IMDb ratings because apparently it's almost at 100%. You mentioned this before, the idea that it just seems like he takes every movie that comes along and he's in the therapist and he actually has that conversation with himself. He's like, I'm sorry. I'm trying to put food on the table for my family that I actually work too much.
He's going over like his pat answer. It's my job. I pay my bills. I feed my family. You're annoying.
Right.
As if he's speaking to the interviewer, answering this question.
Right. And also he's like, stop working so much. Like, make people miss you more. Right. Apparently that was ad-libbed.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, but again, he probably has heard it. He's probably heard this stuff. Who's going to Wall Street and yelling at this guy who puts in 120 hours a week that he's working too hard? Because the guy, everything that he does is up on the screen somewhere. It's like, I'm actually burned out. After watching Face Off, National Treasure 2 is on. I'm like, I can't do it.
That era of, National Treasure, Face Off, Con Air, he was in tons of huge blockbusters.
I think Face Off and Con Air came out like 6 months apart.
They're the same month, June of 97.
There you go. Crazy. Yeah, listen, you couldn't get away from him.
Nick Cage called it his double album.
I love it.
Just as a side note, like my favorite role of his from that action era is actually in The Rock. Because he still plays that kind of quirky Nick Cage character. Like he's still sort of identifiably like the Nick Cage who was in Raising Arizona, but in an action movie. It's like that person has been transposed into this action movie, but in some of the other action movies, he's doing other things. I mean, Con Air is pretty typical, sort of straightforward.
Joel Silver, Michael Bay kind of stuff going on in Con Air.
Yeah.
Con Air is so weird because there's like, talk about like such a heavily overacted movie. Like, why are all these amazing actors in that movie? Why is John Malkovich in Con Air? Why is Ving Rhames in Con Air?
John Leguizamo.
Why is John Cusack in Con Air?
That's right.
Like, why are all these people in this movie?
Yeah, I guess they wanted to be in it.
You get the paycheck, right? You get the paycheck.
It's actually
a movie. That's a TBS on 24 hours.
Oh, definitely. And they probably recognized that when they signed on to do Con Air. They're not dead serious all the time, these guys. Yeah. Malkovich is just hilarious to hang around with.
So speaking of John Malkovich, outside of being John Malkovich, what are other movies where actors actually have kind of played themselves in a role like
The Player?
The Player, yeah.
Keanu Reeves in Always Be My Maybe.
Oh, see, I've never seen that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He's great.
Where he literally
plays Keanu Reeves.
I actually thought he was playing the kitten in that movie, Keanu, but it wasn't.
Andy Serkis, Lord of the Rings.
Forget my question, man. I was really hoping that they would have found Nick Cage's stolen comic collection in Hobby's museum, but they didn't go that far.
Maybe it's a deleted scene.
There's a lot of deleted scenes. You know, you mentioned this cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and I guess there was an entire black and white fight sequence between we didn't even talk about Nicky, his mental
the Wild at Heart
ego.
version of himself.
Yeah, I went like Vampire Kiss, but I guess that younger Nick Cage. There was a scene where they locked lips with each other, and I'm like, all right, this is getting mad over. Nick Cage is now making out with him.
I was wanted to see him more than we did. Yeah. And because Nick Cage in these interviews said that was one of the main selling points that got him to do the movie was the Nicky character.
Alter ego, yeah.
Because he was looking at it like Nutty Professor, Jerry Lewis.
There you go.
And Buddy Love. I think that was the character that was like the Jekyll and Hyde.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I did say if you sat through the credits, that he's actually Nicholas Kim Coppola.
That's his real name.
His real name. So that was the credit they gave to him. This was a lot of fun.
That was one of the interesting things too about reading Age of Cage is, he talked about that, that he dug into that decision that Nicolas Cage made, like not to consciously not to use the Coppola name. And yet he did 3 movies with his uncle, like right at the beginning of his career. So
listen, you take what you can get.
Yeah.
But, you want to stand on your own 2 feet. I get it.
Mm-hmm. We watched after we came home one of those Wired autocomplete interviews. Have you guys ever seen those? So this is like Wired magazine has this series on YouTube called Autocomplete Interviews. And basically what they do is they take the most common Google searches that are related to these actors, and then they give them a little board with like the beginnings of the questions, and then they tear off the thing. So like what people like questions that people are asking about them basically on Google. And Nicolas Cage did one of these. So go look it up. It's the Wired autocomplete interview with Nicolas Cage. It's about 8 minutes long, but I discovered something I never knew before about Nicolas Cage, because one of the questions is, what is Nicolas Cage's dream role?
Ooh, interesting.
Jim, you're going to love this.
I'm assuming at some point he's mentioned this.
It's a Godzilla movie, right?
It's not, but there is a large monster in the movie. His dream role is Captain Nemo.
Ooh,
interesting.
Is somebody paying attention out there to this?
When was the last time that was remade?
Besides the the obvious Disney version, I think the only versions we've gotten have been like direct to TV adaptations, which have all been subpar. To say subpar.
Thank you. I'm back.
We haven't really gone over the overview. Nick Cage plays himself in this movie, a version of himself, and he's kind of down on his luck. At the very beginning of the movie, after the girl gets kidnapped, you see a kidnapping take place at the very beginning of a girl in her late teens, early 20s.
Taken 5 or something.
Then you see Nick Cage at a lunch with David Gordon Green, who's playing himself as well, although he's not identified as himself, but as the director of Halloween Kills. And
for Halloween Kills?
Yes, that is the guy that you can blame. And it's a great lunch. Nick Cage demands to read for him right at lunch, and he reads the line from whatever movie, and the guy's just gobsmacked. He's like, that was amazing. But
I thought he was horrified by it.
I don't think he was horrified. If you got Nick Cage repeating your dialogue like that back to you, if you're horrified, there's something wrong with you. But he doesn't get the part. He's already been offered this deal to go to a birthday party for $1 million in Spain, and he turns it down, but then he doesn't get the part. And he's been really pining for this part. And then he's desperate because he owes the hotel that he's staying at $600,000. He's got his ex-wife and daughter. So he goes to the birthday party, and this is where Javi is. And it turns out that Javi is a figurehead for his cousin, who's the head of an arms drug cartel. And they have kidnapped the girl that you see kidnapped at the beginning of the movie. So, of course, Cage has to step up with Javi to save the girl and save the day. And that's it.
Well, the CIA step in and basically hire Cage to infiltrate and to find out where this girl is. Tiffany Haddish and dealing with him, thinking that he's the super spy that he is in all these movies, breaking into the command center, and he accidentally touches himself with the neurotoxin and passes. There's some really good stuff going on here.
Now, does she die? Does her character die at the end?
No.
Certainly what it appeared to be. They didn't
don't see her again.
pop up in the third reel. So
man, I got so engrossed in that Bruckheimer ending that I didn't really pay attention. If they killed her, I'd be very sad.
I know. And in a way, too, she felt a little underused. But again, we talked about how so many scenes were deleted, so we don't even know what was left behind in terms of trying to cut down the runtime. Side note about David Gordon Green, he directed Joe, which is the movie that Nicolas Cage was in.
I don't know what this Joe is, but I've been hearing a lot about it in doing the research for this.
Yeah, I've seen Joe.
They had a previous relationship is what I'm saying.
But when did this Joe come out? I've never even heard of it.
2013, I think 2014. Yeah. So it was in the very busy stage when Nicolas Cage started making a lot of movies. Movies were sort of going by. And one of the things actually in Age of Cage that was talked about was a lot of Nicolas Cage's films from the early 2010s were films that got very small releases or just went direct to video, direct to streaming. His career in some ways sort of really encapsulated each era because a lot of the films he was making were going direct to streaming before direct to streaming was really a big thing as it's become in the last couple of years. The idea that the films would find their home, find their audience on streaming because you couldn't get a wide release for a film like Joe,
Yeah, I have to look this up because I don't know anything about it.
In one of those interviews, it may have been the Rolling Stone, where he's like, people disparage these movies all the time, but the term direct to video doesn't exist and shouldn't exist anymore. And I think he's right.
Yeah, we're in a whole new world now.
But the problem is, and I know I've talked about this before, and every time I say this, I sound like a cranky old Gen Xer. But
we are.
But
back in my day.
Back in my day, a film like Joe would have found its audience in a video store.
It would have.
Because somebody.
But streaming is the new video.
Don't you think that streaming is the new video store?
But because you can't just walk into the store and see the cover, or I don't know about you guys, but I used to talk to the people at the video store who would recommend things, and they would be like, "Oh, I love this movie. You should check it out."
I think people at the same time aren't saying, "What should I do?" They are going to streaming.
But before, what I'm saying is, if you didn't go to the movies, you had the option of going into the video store and all the movies would be there, right? Everything would be in the video store.
Except for Blockbuster, because it was never there. The box was there to tease me, but the movie itself was not there. Yeah, somebody just took that out and they took it for 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to see it.
But it's always there for you on streaming if you pay that $3.99 or whatever it is.
You don't get the box art, but you do get a trailer.
But I think that so many of these films that are really reliant on word of mouth, if they don't they used to get the word of mouth on video and people be like, oh, I'll check it out. Next time I go to the video store, I'll pick it up. Right. And then you're like, oh, wait, I don't have Hulu, so I can't actually watch this. Never mind. And
now
then
they have to listen to podcasts.
And then you don't get that, that kind of energy behind. Now, on the flip side of that, Mandy was a film that did benefit from word of mouth, that ended up being a modest hit, certainly for the kind of film that it was and that the very limited release that it got. But certainly in cities here, they ended up playing at the Music Box. They just kept, it was only supposed to be there for 2 weeks, I think, or 3 weeks maybe. And they kept bringing it back. It played for 6-7 weeks because there was so much demand. It's very unfortunate that more of his films, I think he's done really obviously some stinkers in the last decade, but he's done some really good work too,
I'm going to put Mandy in that category.
But I've been seeing, I think
Pedro Pascal said Mandy was a masterpiece.
Well,
it is. But I think social media has kind of taken the place of the clerk behind the desk in some way, because a lot of movies, and I see a lot of Nick Cage movies recommended, like on our Twitter feed.
The problem with social media is that someone will go to the theater, they'll see the movie, and they'll be like, it was okay. And then immediately, I'm not going to waste my money. No. Don't base my opinion. Go see it. Except for us, if you listen to us and then listen to what we have to say.
One of the interesting things about this movie is that it does immediately, because it is this sort of meta thing, it inevitably brings up like your thoughts about like his whole body of work and his career.
Well, that's what I said before. If you like Nicolas Cage, you're going to love this movie. If you don't like Nicolas Cage, you're not seeing this movie.
That's why I want to see what these deleted scenes are, because even the few movies that are referenced in here, especially when you go into Pedro Pascal's hobbies shrine
museum
to Cage, you see these are the pearls from The Rock. Is that my chainsaw from Mandy? And then he goes to the mannequin, and then the big joke is like, it's grotesque. I'll give you 20,000 for it.
Right? How much you pay for? They go 6,000.
But it's the guns, the actual guns from Face Off. Caster's guns are in the hands of the mannequin. We're going to talk about those in
the back end,
which he uses at the end of Unbearable.
Yeah, so. Apparently there's a lot more movie references where he kind of leans into some of the characters from that have been on the.
And I had forgotten all about Guarding Tess. I'm like, that's right, he was.
I know that was a pretty obscure.
What's the name of that movie where he wins the lotto and he leaves the ticket as the?
It could happen to you.
It could happen to you.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I've always liked that one.
And that's an example of like where he can play like sort of a naturalistic, low key performance, right? Yeah. It's not all maximum Cage all the time. Although when we talk about Face Off, we'll talk about this. The thing about that movie is Nicolas Cage is a maximalist performer and John Woo is a maximalist director. So those are like two sensibilities are sort of well paired in that film.
Well, because at that point he had been gonzo in movies, look at Wild at Heart, look at Vampire's Kiss. But what people knew him for, I think at that point, was Moonstruck. Largely,
which was very
Face Off, really, I think, even though he'd been there before, really kind of cemented the Gonzo Cage in most people's minds.
I agree.
I'm just thinking of that one shot in particular where he has his hands on the buttocks of that one girl in the choir, and you see a close up of his crazed face. Yeah.
So maybe I think we probably should move on to Face Off.
I was going to say at this point we're already talking about Face Off.
I think that we're already transitioning. It's kind of hard not to.
Yes, correct.
Kind of hard not to. Like I said, start talking about his body of work, start talking about different films you've seen him in, start talking about, what you think of this and that. So, definitely just want to give another plug to this book because it was really, really interesting to read it before I saw this movie because it sort of put his whole career in perspective. And as was pointed out in the book, whatever you think of Nicolas Cage, this man has had a 4-decade career.
Yeah.
He's won an Oscar. He's been nominated twice. He's had some amazing movies that would genuinely be considered masterpieces. Like, how many actors can say that?
No. And just the amount, I'd just be curious to know how much his movies in total have brought in at the box office, because he's been in huge films over and over and over again, especially during that period.
Yeah.
In the 90s.
Yeah. I do want to just give a shout out to Neil Patrick Harris, who we did not talk about. I've always liked seeing him. He plays the agent, and there's a scene in the massage parlor, which was just tickled me. So, all right, buckets for Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Yeah, apparently I forgot how this show works because I didn't give myself buckets. Well, you've been gone for 3 weeks. It is admissible. You guys go first. I'll piggyback. I'm giving it 4 buckets. Wow, that's big for you. Wow. Yeah, I'm also gonna say 4. I like this a lot, but I'm a Nick Cage fan. Yeah. No, even if you're not, though, even if you have just a cursory knowledge of like the big Nick Cage movies, I think this movie will do it for you. It's funny. It was a great day out. I'm not going to say night out because it wasn't at night when I saw it, but it was a great day out for me at the movies. It was a night for somebody. Like I said, my wife did not fall asleep, so that's always a screaming endorsement. I'll go 4 1/4. I really, even more so than just Nick Cage. It really kind of like takes, like you said, some of the movie tropes and some of the things that we've seen 1,000 times and kind of tweaks them and makes fun of them. And I can't say enough about Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, the chemistry between the two of them and that's what you have to hang this movie on, and it works.
And I hate to say it, but like 3/4 of the way through the movie, I'm just like, you know who that guy is, right? That's the Mandalorian. She goes, what? I said, Baby Yoda. She goes, he's Baby Yoda. I'm like, no.
He's a
All right, we'll talk about this at the other end.
You should have said, yes, he is. Yeah, you didn't know that?
Yeah.
That's Grogu.
Yeah, my wife is notorious for that guy. He was in that thing. Who was he? I'm like, stop. Highly recommend.
But yeah, let's go to the concession stand and we'll come back for Face Off.
Fair enough.
As soon as we can, let's flick our Bix.
I don't know about you, but I'm hungry.
Now that you mention it, some burgers and fries would go great with a flick.
And we should also not forget some popcorn, soft drinks, and ice cream.
Then, can we flick our Bix?
Sure. I'd bet you could also get me some chicken salad sandwiches with mayo and a pickle.
How about some pizza?
Oh, with cheese and anchovies.
Ooh, pepperoni.
Okay, we're back and we are talking Face Off. June 1997. Again, we mentioned earlier, the same month that Con Air was released. Now, this boggles my mind. You know, it's obviously two different production companies. But would you want to step on another movie's toes that has Nick Cage as the star in another action movie? That doesn't seem to be, good marketing. But
again, was he really, quote unquote, Nick Cage at that time? I think these two movies cement him in becoming.
But still, if you wanted to push him as an action star, why ride on the coattails of another movie? But it worked. It worked.
And the other thing is that I'm sure we forget this now, but John Travolta was again one of the biggest stars.
Yes,
in the
he
country.
was. Yeah. Was this post or pre Get Shorty? I know it was post. It's post Get Shorty. Okay, I know it was because Pulp Fiction brought him right back.
I actually wrote a note. It was like, is this the last relevant movie Travolta has made besides Bolt and Battlefield Earth? Because after
Battlefield Earth,
I still like. One day we will discuss that. For good or for better or for worse.
I won't be here for that.
Oh, you're going to be gone that day. We're also going to rewatch Suspiria that day.
Jim will be here by himself.
Yeah. Jim's like in a pissing match. I don't want to do that. I don't want to. Jim's like, I got to do everything. I got to watch it all. Jim hits the record button. All right, John Woo. Was this John Woo's first American?
Please.
No, he had done Broken Arrow before.
Target.
This too.
Hard
Target. Yeah, done Hard Target.
That's where I was going with that.
I think for the rest of the show, I'm just going to say Hard Target.
But also he had done Broken Arrow with John Travolta.
Was that before this? I guess so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He wasn't the first director to be attached to this. So he came on pretty late in the game.
Yeah.
Well, he owned all the doves, so they had to.
Yes.
Does this guy have like a dove farm?
He does. He must.
Yeah.
There's got to be doves released in every single John Woo film.
In slow motion.
The film was actually originally set 100 years in the future, which was in the original draft of the script, which makes this surgery a lot more plausible.
Yes, it does. Yes.
I know.
Because that's the thing that always trips me up when I'm watching this movie.
Yeah, no,
I cannot. It is so difficult for me to watch the operation scene, just the sounds themselves. I've got to put my fingers in my ears and close my eyes. Just the suction of the face coming off.
That doesn't bother me so much as it's so implausible in the present
and
day.
They have no scars.
And that even my son was watching with me. He had never seen it. And he was this is not how this works. I mean,
it's in this movie. That's how it works.
He was like, you can't just take someone's face off.
Sure, you can. That's the name of the movie.
But of course, and then not only do you take their face off, but then you have to change their body to look like the other person's body.
It's very implausible. Although they did predict a 3D printer when they were making that ear for the guy who got shot.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that stuff now. Oh, of course, you're growing years on the back of mice, but
originally it was supposed to be set 100 years in the future, and there was supposed to be like an organ bank where like you could go and get anything that you wanted as long as you had enough money. And the
I'd like to take out a spleen, please.
And this is where the kind of high-tech prison concept also came from. So like the face removal and the high-tech prison sort of stayed, and then everything else went away and became like part of modern day. But John Woo was interested in it because he really was thinking of it not so much of as an action movie, but as like a character piece, you know, where you would have these two actors like exploring the nature of good and evil and like what it means to play someone else. And it was actually Michael Douglas, who was a producer on the film, who went to the screenwriters and was like, if you dig into the characters, that's what's going to make this interesting. And that is sort of what sustains this film really as it goes on, because the surgery scene is so saggy, like in terms of like your suspension of disbelief, it almost kills the movie. And I love John Woo. You guys know I love John Woo. I had not seen this film since it came out.
Because I'm assuming we all saw it in the theater.
Yeah, I saw it in the theater. Yeah.
Because I remembered being like, this concept is so ridiculous.
But if you buy into it, then you're on board.
Well, that's the whole thing. You have to meet this movie on its own terms.
Yeah,
that's correct.
Well, it's just like any other Marvel movie or anything else like that, right? Yeah. Which is all patently ridiculous. But
well, going back to that face removal scene, I literally laughed out loud in this viewing when Nick Cage wakes up and he realizes his face is gone, and he calls his goons to come in and bring in the surgeon,
the doctor,
and he uses the word bravo and fabulous. You can't say those words without lips. He has no lips.
He can't smoke. He can't smoke. Right.
But he's got something. He's got like musculature there, right? He can put it together.
Removed his face. You don't have any muscles over your teeth.
But then the other thing, my son was like, Nicolas Cage and John Travolta do not have the same body.
No, not at all. Well, they do. They do mention
so.
We'll
if you're
get rid of the love handles,
if you're John Travolta, you're like, sure, get rid of my love handles. But if you're Nicolas Cage, you're like, you gotta do what to me? Come on.
Well, I mean, John Travolta's character literally says, "So you're asking me to lie to my loved ones and betray everything I know? I'll do it." It's like he's like, "Oh, I'm bored. Yeah, okay, I'll play this bad guy who killed my son."
You know what else is ridiculous about the operating scene? Is that the dummies look like dummies of the two of them.
They don't look like them at all. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Dummies. And apparently Nicolas Cage freaked out when he saw the dummy. Like freaked out because he thought it looked enough like him dead that he found it very.
But he was okay with the one
unnerving.
From Unbearable.
I was going to say that would have been great if that was the dummy.
Yeah.
In Javi's museum was the one from Face Off.
And the other thing I read about this film was that Cage had actually lost a bunch of weight right before this movie because he had done Con Air, and he was
cut.
He was very, very thin too, like because he was like, I'm supposed to have been in prison. It was just the beginning stages of the movie where they were trying to cast them, and John Travolta and Nicolas Cage like were at a meeting, and they went over. There was like this big buffet spread, and John Travolta starts putting all this like carbs and like lamb chops on his plate. And Nicolas Cage puts on like a kale salad and like something else. And Travolta's like, I don't suppose you'd gain a little weight before this movie.
How about you lose some, big guy?
Cage is like, I can't. I'm, in this movie where I'm playing someone who's been in prison. And Travolta, the writer who was doing this interview about Face Off, said, so Travolta put the lamb chops back on the platter. Yeah.
He was denied lamb chops.
Mm-hmm.
Probably just that time, though. I'm like, they probably guilted him on that particular
he goes
meal.
Home and he has a bag of Cheetos.
Yeah.
He's like,
poor guy.
When they take his face off, and then they cut his hair. Don't you think you should have cut the hair first?
I know the hair's getting in that bloody mess on
it. See, this is the thing. We said we have to meet this movie on its own terms, and yet you find yourself nitpicking this scene. It's so saggy. It like seriously almost kills the film.
I remember being in the theater though, and I mean, the boat chase sequence at the end really sticks in my mind. But I just remember everybody really being into this. Like, the entire audience
it was
on board. It's stupid, but I'm in.
It was a crowd pleaser.
Yes, it still is.
You know, the one scene that stuck with me, I've probably seen it once or twice since I saw it in the theater. And it's been a long time since I've seen it before this viewing. But the scene that always sticks with me is not the operating scene, is the action sequence with the plane at the beginning.
Okay, where he's chasing.
And when he says to the pilot, "Fly, bitch." That's the most iconic Cage quote to me in all of his films. If there was a t-shirt with that, I would buy it.
I'm going to make a t-shirt for you. I will say that Archer's parenting skills are severe. They do not hold up. Like, his daughter, you know, the whole family's dealing with the death of the little boy. And his daughter's got facial makeup and she's getting in trouble at school. And he goes, "Look at you. What are you supposed to be?" And I'm like, you don't say that to your 16-year-old child. Like, come on, dude. Castor was her father for 24 hours and he did a better job.
He should make her watch Caligari.
That is a hell of an opening, though, as you mentioned. With
there's so many like real John Woo touches in that scene, because like when Castor and Pollux come out of the plane sideways with their coats flowing, holding two guns, you're like, it's Chow Yun Fat and Hard Boiled, except they're not as cool as Chow Yun Fat.
I started a checklist that said, "Tell me this is a 90s movie," without telling me it's a 90s movie. You know, when you're using zip drives and you have to mention the Gulf War Syndrome reference, it's like
zip drives. No, it was a floppy disk.
But he put it in a zip drive. But he put it in a zip drive. They don't even work together. Yeah, it was a DOS. Yeah, the tough guy.
My son goes, "I've never seen one of those before."
No, let's go to the museum. It's right next to the Walkman. It's crazy.
And the scene, the opening scene, like before the plane sequence, is brutal. When you see Travolta's kid get killed.
Oh yeah.
Is that a bullet hole in the back of the kid's head?
Certainly what it appears to be.
I think that they actually had to trim that down. But the
from what?
Keeps going.
From what?
Yeah, I think that there was a little more. Am I the only one who hates when people touch their face? Like, I wear glasses. And
like when you touch your own face?
No, when somebody else touches your face. This guy's literally palming his
Then you hate
like,
this movie if that's the case.
Petting you. Oh, I cringed every time he does it. I'm like, leave your hands off my face. Because now I got to clean my glasses. Like, it's just like, I guess originally he was supposed to like just boop him on the nose kind of a thing.
Don't keep your mouth open around this guy.
No, where's your hand been? I don't know. That just really kind of freaked me out. So maybe it's just me.
So I think one of the greatest things in this movie, though, this is like, it's like if you can just get past that surgery scene for whatever thing is bothering you about it, whether it's implausible or it's like, you know,
which is the premise of the whole movie.
Right? If you could just buy into this ridiculous premise.
I think it would be better. I think the film would be better served if they didn't have the scene in the movie. I do.
If they just did it off camera?
Yes.
Oh, no, you got to see that. That's it's cringeworthy. But like you said, if it was set in the future, at least you're like, all right, maybe by then they
right.
But then the budget is like out of the park, because then you got to create a future world on top of that.
So here was one of the things that was interesting. True. One of the reasons why it didn't become a futuristic film is because the studio that originally optioned this script decided to do Demolition Man.
So there you go.
So they were like two futuristic action movies. Like, they didn't bother to look at the actual plot of the films, which obviously are different, but they were like, oh, well, like, we can't have two futuristic action movies. So then, you know, this started to morph away from being a futuristic.
And I love the fact that the doctor says, oh yeah, this is totally reversible. Like with no indication that we've done this at all.
We're just going to keep this face in like a bag of Jello.
Yeah,
and we'll make you. It later.
We'll make you fat again after this is over. Don't worry.
Yeah, how they sculpt his skull? Like, you got to change his whole face, his teeth. But I will tell you, John Travolta is killing it. He is having an absolute blast in this movie, playing Nicolas Cage.
He's like a perfect mimic. That's the thing. it's really unnerving almost.
Well, you see it like he's getting into it as a character, because he's so, there's a joke later when obviously Castor takes over his body and Margaret Cho's like, oh, did you have surgery? And he's like, what? She's like, oh, to remove that stick up your ass. And I'm like, that's the character. He was so straight laced. And now all of a sudden he has to play this unhinged and he's getting into it. And you see, he's like reveling and horrified all at once. Nicolas Cage really doesn't have much to do once he becomes Archer.
Because he's the straight man. Because he's the straight man.
Yeah. And
but this gives you so much to chew on. It gives you so much to chew on as a viewer. Because
is that another fat joke at John Travolta's expense? Okay.
No, it makes you aware that Travolta is playing Cage and Cage's character at the same time. And the same thing is going on with Cage. So it's just like, it gives you so much to think about as you're watching it.
Right. You kind of think that this is a Nicolas Cage movie, but it's really John Travolta's.
Mm-hmm.
He is just absolutely killing it.
Nicolas Cage has like all of these weird pauses when he speaks. He actually described his own acting style like jazz, that he tries to find like a rhythm and an inflection when he's speaking. And John Travolta really recognizes that, because that's the thing that really makes it feel like Nicolas Cage, is the way he's speaking, even though he does copy his mannerisms and stuff, but it's his style of speech, which is so distinctive, and Travolta captures it perfectly.
But I think Cage has the most nuanced performance, because Travolta is just playing a bad guy. Basically, he's twirling his mustache in all of his scenes. Cage is the one that has to pretend he's a bad guy and going against every instinct that he knows. And those scenes where he's like trying to laugh maniacally as Castor and crying at the same time. It's an amazing performance on Cage's part.
Yeah, it's interesting, right, that Nicolas Cage was the one who would end up playing the less intense character.
Right.
Throughout the film, because he just has a few kind of big scenes at the beginning, and then for the rest of the film, he's got to play like the lower.
But I don't think so. But I don't think Travolta, as hard as he cannot match what Cage sets up at the beginning of the movie. He is completely insane.
Oh, he is, especially when he's dressed as the priest. Yeah, no, I agree with that. But I think he does a fantastic job. It was actually really fun watching this again.
The scene, and just like he's a headbanger where he's twirling his head in front of the corner.
Yeah. Just minus the long hair. Yeah. Yeah. That girl was severely underage, by the way. That's not right.
You won't see that anymore outside of the 90s scene like that.
I do have a little nitpick with the fact that when they caught Castor on the plane, he had his golden guns with him. So where did the other guy, did they have like a spare set of golden guns to give him back?
Oh, you mean Nick Cassavetes, by the way, who was also in Prisoners of the Ghostland?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even put that together.
Yeah, it's like, did they go to the site and like get his guns back for him?
Right. Go into like police impound.
Again, this is one of many questions that you shouldn't look at too closely if you want to actually enjoy this film.
Yeah. And I love when Travolta's about to, and we keep coming back to the operation. But
how can you not?
When Travolta's about to go under and he says, "Doc, can you put my scar back? It's important to me." The doc's like, "Yeah, whatever." just knock him out already, all right?
My tax dollars at work. I don't need this scar anymore. No, what? You're going to have another scar from the surgery.
And who else can do this? The doctor's killed by Castor. Oh, yeah, we'll get somebody else.
They killed everybody.
The best team available, the best surgical team available.
Yeah, well.
Right. Again,
Bob
there's so many things, honestly, like this is the kind of film, if you start pulling the thread, the whole tapestry is going to fall apart. Okay. Because if you look at it too closely, like the whole thing where he brings home Castor's son at the end, like just shows up with a kid like, "Hey,
cousin Oliver,
here, I have a child."
Not only that, he gets his face put back on. She doesn't go to the hospital to pick him up. How do you get home? You just take a cab.
He had to go and pick up this kid, apparently.
Pick up the new kid. Yeah,
and she didn't know about it until the kid is at the front door.
Sorry, we can't take him back. Sorry. Here's a receipt. Sorry.
I mean, That's the thing
Adam.
always bothers me. Like, he's just like, I'm just going to take this child of my mortal enemy. And
Yeah. Oh, and that kid is not grown up normal. No matter what kind of life he has with them, that kid is not going to be normal as an adult.
Now that he's cathartic, he's gotten rid of this guy who shot his kid and destroyed his family. Is he going to change his lock combination to his house? Because it was the dead kid's birthday.
yeah. That's the thing. All I can think is Adam's got like a lifetime of therapy ahead of him. Like,
yeah. Well,
like,
you're never going to be Michael. He's going to call him Michael. He's probably going to change the kid's name. Yeah, Adam's not working for me. Ay.
Did we catch Joe Bob Briggs cameo?
No.
Yeah, he's one of the guys when Nicolas Cage, when Archer,
okay,
in the prison starts the fight to get himself taken away.
Yep.
One of the guys that locks him in the chair is Joe Bob.
Was he wearing his cowboy hat?
He was not. He was wearing like a lab.
That's why I didn't recognize.
He was wearing like a lab outfit. He has one line and then you don't see him again.
Huh. Nope. Did catch that.
The whole reason that they switch faces is that after the flourish of action at the beginning, Castor, played by Nicolas Cage, the super terrorist, played by Nick Cage, is in a coma. So he's pretty much a vegetable. So it allows them to take his face off and put it on Archer's face so he can find out where this bomb is. That
you could just interrogate the brother. You could just bring him into one of those interrogations.
And the brother is like, how many times have you seen this guy in a movie? Like, the bookish with the glasses, the guy that's always on the bad guy's team that knows the computers. And, you see.
I think he was a Riddler in the last Batman movie.
And then, of course, Castor wakes up at some point after Archer goes into prison as Castor and then puts his own face on, becomes Archer, diffuses the bomb and becomes a hero.
Gets a suit that fits him and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I guess he can just go home at that point. Right?
So then, nobody knows that Archer is Castor in prison. So he's got to break out and stop the real Castor and clear his name.
right. And somehow his wife manages to convince everybody that this is true.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Just with the power of her voice, she convinces everybody that this is actually her husband in someone else's body.
But they do gloss over the fact that Castor sleeps with the wife at some point. You are pretty much convinced that he does. Wants to sleep with the daughter. If he does or not, it's off camera. I don't know.
I don't think he does.
No, I don't think. They shared cigarettes, and he gave her a knife.
He gave her the knife.
Very handy.
Which she actually sticks in his leg at the
so he should have bled out.
Yeah, I do like the follow through with the knife.
Yeah. Ha ha! That's a good ha ha moment.
Well, think about the knife conveniently showing up in the Jeep and over unbearable weight of massive talent. Same thing. Follow through.
We're talking about Nick Cassavetes as Dietrich. When Archer as Castor goes to the hideout and Gina Gershon is there and the kid is there, he starts to just ramble. Archer does about, I want to get him and take his face off. Right. And then Cassavetes, I want to take his face off. He's repeating it. And I love that scene.
Drink every time they say the name of the movie.
Don't give this man any more drugs.
Right. You guys are nuts. Originally, I think that they had Schwarzenegger and Stallone in mind for this.
Yes.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Where does your mind go when you think about a movie like this?
I would love to see those two pretend to be each other. That would be phenomenal.
I don't know if they have the acting ability, either of them, to do that.
Everybody's got a Schwarzenegger, right? I'm sure that Stallone somewhere along the line has imitated his friend Arnold. Yes.
So these were the pairings that I read were possible. Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger, Michael Douglas and Harrison Ford, Alec Baldwin and Bruce Willis. And at one point, Johnny Depp was asked to star opposite Nick Cage.
Now that would have been interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. The other team ups are just like, they seem just random,
Mm-hmm.
Well, Michael Douglas was the producer, so I guess he could. I want Harrison Ford.
Let me put a name in it. Let me put names in a hat, and I'll pull up
correct.
who. Yeah.
Did you read that in an early draft? The writers wanted Castor's mother to be played by either Elizabeth Taylor or Jack Nicholson in drag. Sit on that for a minute. Like, what?
Is that real? Is that real?
It was on the internet. It was on the internet. It must be real.
Seems apocryphal.
Like, imagine Imagine you buy into this and you're like, all right, they're changing faces, whatever. And then Jack Nicholson shows up in drag. Like, you're just like, what is going on?
Can we start a rumor that there's a deleted scene of Jack Nicholson in drag for Face Off? I see him in the background. I see him.
Yes, I will say the wire work and the stunt work on the end, the boat sequence is pretty impressive. I mean, this guy's tied to a chain on the side of the boat, dragging.
And you know what's funny? You say that is that during the beginning, the airplane scene I keep going back to as well, is that when Castor is blowing away people with a shotgun, and one thing you could see the wire pull the guy back after he gets shot. And I didn't mind. It was like a reminder that this is practical, what I'm looking at.
Practical, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're talking 97, so yeah.
There's
probably and also because as we talked about when we talked about Hard Boiled, John Woo came from Hong Kong and they do everything practically and they use their lead actors as crash test dummies. And this was very, very big action, I think, for American audiences, but this is toned down from the stuff that he did in Hong Kong.
It's relatively bloodless, but I'm going to say the body count was pretty high. I didn't do an actual count, but you're talking dozens. Yeah, that whole boat chase actually won Best Action Sequence, and it was intended for Hard Target. Did you know that, Jim?
I did not. You know what's funny is outside of these amazing performances. I didn't see for me it's the same experience. I got the same John Woo fix in Hard Target as I got here. Yeah. I will go to my grave lauding Hard Target. I'm sorry.
We know, and if you haven't seen it, go watch it and then listen to our episode because we did cover it.
But more importantly, if you haven't seen Hard Boiled, go and watch
Hard Boiled as well. any John Woo.
But I tend to think, his American work is watered down, and it is just
by committee, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's so different from what happens in Hong Kong, where he is like, basically the emperor on the set, and he can, decide what he wants to do, and there's just a completely different set of rules.
Although that's the way it should be.
I did read in many accounts of that this was probably, in terms of his American movies, he had the least amount of studio interference here than he's had anywhere else.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And you can tell especially when you get to the end of the film, this is a John Woo film. There's a face-off in a church with a bunch of doves.
Mm-hmm. Again, there's a checklist. Yeah.
There's obviously like a bunch of brutal gun battles. There's a hugely operatic action sequence, with the boats. Mm-hmm. It's a John Woo film. It's just, to me, it's less recognizably a John Woo film than his other work.
And do they have to put them side by side in the ambulance? It's like, shouldn't Archer be saying, you can't get me my own ambulance. I have to be right next to this guy.
Look at this guy again. He just mutilated my face.
But no problem, right? You can fix that. No problem.
They fixed it in post. Yeah.
The other thing that was interesting to me is this apparently inspired a film that both you guys know I love, which is Infernal Affairs.
Yes, I did read that myself.
Andrew Lau, though, for Infernal Affairs, instead of having them switch faces, just have them
been there, done that. We got to move
switch identities, which is obviously a little more realistic. Yeah. And I think, personally, Infernal Affairs is a superior film.
Yes, correct. It's two completely different movies altogether. We also covered that, by the way.
So. Yes,
we did.
We're digging deep into our oeuvre this week.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Olivia Newton-John, Over the Rainbow.
Well,
Grease connection.
Yeah, gotta have that, right?
The studio originally did not want the slash in the title, Face Off, and Woo did that because he didn't want people to think it was a movie about hockey. I don't think he would have had any problem there.
Is this a sequel to Slapshot?
Cage and Travolta spent 2 weeks together prior to filming so they could pick up on each other's mannerisms.
They were like Cage and Javi hanging out.
I guess they were.
Croatia.
Maybe Cage had his own Travolta shrine.
Probably.
He had Danny's leather jacket hanging up somewhere. Grease lightning in his garage.
Ooh.
Cage did not want to see himself in the face-off makeup, to the point where Wu had to take any reflective surfaces offset, so Cage would not see himself in that makeup because it freaked him out. I didn't want to see it either. I understand.
I was going to say. You're not alone.
During filming, it fell on Cage's birthday. Wu asked him to get really worked up and emotional for a scene and then sprang a surprise birthday cake on him.
Why?
And then Cage shook him aside and said, "Don't do that. Don't work me up." And then
get them all worked up?
I don't know.
Ah, surprise. There's no film in the camera.
Pollux, played by Alessandro Nivola. This was turned down by Mark Wahlberg, this part, by the way. So the actor, if you become distracted with his vocal delivery, which I did, because it seemed like he was sucking in air every time he talked. Like, Castor, I've got the bomb. Castor, I know where it is. And as he's pushing up his glasses, he took inspiration from the documentary Crumb, which is on Robert Crumb. I guess this is how Crumb's brother actually spoke. So that's where he got this vocal cadence. He doesn't talk like that in real life.
That's a deep dive. I did read that the metallic boots that are in the prison were also worn by the Goombas in Super Mario Brothers. Same props.
Put to much better use here. Better use here.
The only other thing I want to bring up, which is the first real life face plant, was not accomplished until 2012.
Face plant? I've done a couple of those.
Transplant. I said face plant. This guy accidentally shot himself in the face with a shotgun, and all I have to say is, how? How do you accidentally shoot yourself with a shotgun? I'm sorry. The same year the movie came out, but so he had to live with that for 15 years. But he finally got a new face. Whose face? I have no idea. Maybe it was one of the leftover ones from this movie.
And the doctor told him during his initial consultation, "I'm going to take your face off."
So it was a face transplant, not like reconstructive.
Like
surgery.
From who?
It's actually,
who did he take it from?
See, too many questions now. I don't have answers. It is a face transplant, is what I read. It is not a reconstruction. They probably tried to restructure it over the years. But a shotgun, unless it was birdshot, it's going to do some serious damage to your skull. I don't know.
He's probably looking down the barrel to see if it was loaded. And his name was Elmer Fudd, actually.
I'm going to get you, Rascal, you have it.
The movie, it cost $80 million. It was a huge box office hit. It did not have to worry about stepping on Con Air's toes. Cost $80 million, and it made $245 million at the box office.
All right. We didn't get Face Off 2.
We are getting Face Off 2.
Yes. We're getting a sequel.
This is a sequel. Adam Wingard, who directed Godzilla vs. Kong, has been tapped to make a sequel.
That was the thing I sent you the other day.
Yes. Well, sorry, it's been a rough week. I need to reacclimate myself to a work.
To reality?
Yeah, basically.
So will it be Castor and Archer again? Will it be Godzilla and Kong? Who knows?
I'm going to say it's going to be Adam and Michael. Michael's ghost is going to come back. You don't know who's starring.
We don't know. It
Wingard,
didn't say.
He should be working on the new Kong Godzilla. Why is he making Face Off 2?
I don't know.
Back to Monster Island, dude. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree.
No, don't take me back to Monster Island so that the rights can revert back to Toho so they can make a sequel to Shin Godzilla.
Toho takes like 10 years between movies.
I know. Yeah, they're like, enough Godzilla. We're not going to make it anymore.
Get off the pot already, Toho, with that.
When are we going to get Shin Ultraman, which we talked about like 2 years ago?
It's coming.
It's coming, but it was delayed because of COVID.
There's a new trailer.
Filming was delayed.
Is there? Oh,
I saw one a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Know that.
So it's going to be here eventually.
Okay, fair enough.
How can you go dark with Ultraman? Is it going to go in the same vein as Shin? You would think so if they're calling it Shin Ultraman, but Ultraman by nature is like a superhero.
He can be dark
unless he goes Gonzo Ultraman.
We'll see.
Putting his hands on robot buttocks, and
Nicolas Cage as Ultraman, Shin Ultraman.
Jim, you are in a mood today.
Jim, he's hopped up on Wheaties or something.
I'm back, baby, but I never left.
What'd you ask? Buckets. I'm gonna
buckets.
Go 3 3/4. It's
I can't give as many buckets to this as to Unbearable, but
no.
3.5. 3.5.
Okay, fair enough.
Just 3. There are things that I like about it, but it's very, very hard to get over the things that are implausible.
I like it better than Con Air. I do like it better than Con Air.
Whoa,
Yes,
wow.
I agree.
Fight me on that one. I don't agree with that at all.
But I think of this action trilogy, The Rock is easily the best of the three, no doubt. Because that was before Michael Bay got excessive. It was sort of early in his career.
Still a lot of explosions going on.
There's still a lot of explosions, but it's not quite at the level like that he would reach later on. So like some of his excesses were tempered. And again, I think that Nicolas Cage is playing kind of a quirky character.
Yeah.
That's sort of been dropped into an action movie, and I like that.
Yeah, he's playing it a little more straight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I still don't agree with the Con Air thing, but that's neither here nor there. That's another.
Someday we have. That's
conversation.
another one. That's another conversation. We've never covered Con Air
for now. I don't think I could watch another Cage movie right now.
That's so funny because I'm totally like.
You're like, that's more. Bring it on.
I'm like, I think I'll just spend the rest of the week watching Nick Cage.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I'm definitely gonna watch Prisoners of the Ghostland again.
Oh. Have fun.
I think Mandy deserves another watch in this household.
Yeah, I own Mandy, so that's one that I've watched more than once.
I'll watch Croods too. Thank you very much.
Tiffany Haddish is the cutest. Tiffany Haddish and Ike Barinholtz were actually on this show, The After Party, that was on Apple TV, and it's a murder mystery comedy thing based. Christopher Miller and Phil Lord did it. And Christopher Miller came up with the concept because he loves Rashomon. If you're familiar with the story of Rashomon, it's about a crime that is told from multiple points of view, and that's what happens in this show. You know, I don't watch a lot of TV, but we actually, all three of us sat down and watched this, and we loved it. So I don't know how you might have an opportunity to watch it, but if you do, it was so much fun. Sam Richardson's in it too, Alana Glazer, like amazing cast. Really, really fun show. And Tiffany Haddish is great.
So we've come to the end of another journey. What are we doing next week?
I have no clue what we're doing. Are we doing our book club?
We're doing our book club.
We are finally doing my choice.
Well, I hope so, because I'm almost done with the book. I've got it in the other room.
Yeah, it takes like a day, right?
Yeah. I started it yesterday.
I'm waiting for you to call me out for picking a children's book.
I can't wait to see this movie. I've not seen it yet.
I was surprised. This was came out 2017. It is on Prime. I had no clue that they made a movie about this, so I have not seen the movie yet.
Okay.
But it is a book well loved in my family. Skylar and I read this multiple times. So Wonderstruck by Brian Selznick, and we will be comparing the novel, to the movie.
Yeah.
I'm excited for this one. We'll see what they bring. So hopefully you are liking our book club featurettes.
This was Jeff's brainchild, by the way. That Jeff originally suggested this, and like full credit, because I love this concept. Like I could do this every week.
Yeah, I know that. Now I regret it
because this is like this.
We're gonna read another book. Jeff.
This in some way completes our initial trilogy, because Wizard of Oz is an outlier, really.
Yep.
But Christina did Death on the Nile. I did Christine by Stephen King. And now Jeff is doing Wonderstruck. And then when Wizard of Oz, we were going to do that as a 5-bucket, and then just the opportunity presented itself as a book club.
And that was very, I enjoyed that immensely.
Yeah.
Being able to read the original.
And we should mention, because I think this would give people a chance to read along if they want to, that we are planning on doing this again for Firestarter.
Yeah, I saw the trailer for this the other day.
So I think that if people want to play along, at the end of May, we'll actually be doing Firestarter Spectacular, because we'll be doing the book and the original film with Drew Barrymore and the new film.
Ooh, It's like a fire sale.
So if you are interested and you want to do the side-by-side comparison with us, you have a month to read Firestarter.
I'm going to have to get it from my library. Oh, yeah, by the way, I was too cheap to pay $2.99 to rent Face-Off on Prime. So I spent $12 in gas to go to the library and pick it up. So there you go. All right. Well, thank you as always for listening. Good to be back.
Good to have you back, Jeff. Good to have you.
Jim's got his work cut out trimming this down.
I'm not going to trim a second from this one. I'm just dropping it online the way that it is.
There was some serious bloviating going on here. So, all right, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey, everybody. If you like what you just heard, be sure to follow TMI Confessionals of the Nerd Kind on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or whatever you listen to your favorite podcasts on. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and then share it with your fellow movie nerd friends. It means the world to us and helps our listenership grow.
You can also find us on all of the socials, Instagram and Twitter at TMI_podcast 2018. We're on Facebook and YouTube as well. Just look for the Popcorn Bucket.
You can help support this show by visiting our TeePublic page for some TMI branded goodies such as hoodies, t-shirts, mugs, and stickers. tpublic.com/TMI Confessionals, all one word.
A 5-star review would be incredibly nice as well. I'm just saying.
Thanks again for listening. We truly appreciate you. Be sure to come back next week. We'll save some popcorn for you.
What is up with all the dead jokes?
Whoa, was it too soon for Dracula?
Side note, I don't think that Disney would have any chainsaws.